Welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast, where we're all about sharing the forbidden secrets and slightly embellished truths about corporate cybersecurity programs. We're ranting, we're raving, and we're telling you the stuff that nobody talks about on their fancy website and trade show giveaways, all to protect you from cyber criminals. And now, here's your hosts, Mike Rotondo, Zach Fuller, and Lauro Chavez.
Hello and welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast. This is your co-host, Zach Fuller, joined by Mike Rotondo and Lauro Chavez. Today we are talking about lots of colors of the cybersecurity rainbow, I guess you could call it. But more specifically, we're going to focus on red team, blue team, and everything in between. Talk about what red team exercises are, talk about the pros and cons, all kinds of stuff that you never knew you wanted to know about red team and purple team exercises. But before we dive into that, why don't we just start in our usual way? Mike?
Morning, Zach. Good morning, everybody. Here's the news for today. Traditional MFA is creating a false sense of security. Organizations are grappling to implement a solid security strategy to meet regulations and to engage and to ensure customer confidence, all while responding to a forever hovering pandemic. You've heard about that a little bit. That's leaving their teams understaffed and overworked. Many of these organizations are relying on traditional authentication methods to tick a box in hopes to protect them against the next breach. There's a report that came out from HYPR, that reveals traditional MFA is actually creating a false sense of security. Despite the Zero Trust initiative, many organizations are still highly exposed to credential attacks due to insufficient multi-factor MFA methods and overall lack of urgency after potential exposure. 64% of those hacked did not enhance or improve their password-based authentication controls following the attack, and 65% of those that claim to be passwordless continue to employ methods based in secret sharing, such as SMS or one-time password. 19% are unsure whether the solution is truly passwordless. So long story short, there's a lot of problems around authentication and hacking. So you might want to tune that up, especially if you've been breached. Online frauds skyrocketing. Gaming, streaming, social media, travel, and e-commerce hit the most. There's a lot of stories about fraud. There's a lot going on right now. Arcos Labs report is warning that UK commerce that it faces its most challenging year ever. Experts analyzed over 150 billion transaction requests across 254 countries and territories in 2021. Over 12 months to discover that there has been 85% increase in login attacks and fake consumer account creation at businesses. Alongside this, it identified that 1 in 4 new online accounts created were fake. A further 21% of all traffic was confirmed as a fraudulent cyber attack. That's a lot of traffic. And then continuing down that vein, fraud and scam activity hits an all-time high. A company called Bolster published a report which shows an unprecedented level of fraud activity spurred by the continuing growth of digital commerce, leading to an explosion of companies' external attack surfaces. Accelerated growth in online fraud globally in 2021. The total number of phishing and counterfeit pages increased by 1.5 times over 2020 to a total of 10.5 million and continues to grow in 2022. Threats soar on a daily basis. The average number of phishing and counterfeit pages detected per day in 2021 increased to over 29,000, up from 19,000 in 2020. Fraudsters are capitalizing on explosive growth of digital-based services. Phishing and scam attacks more than quadrupled for the SaaS communications, gaming, and streaming industries. And lastly, external attack surfaces has no geographic boundaries. Fraudulent activity also grew in scope in 2021 as the top countries hosting malicious sites expanded. They are the United States, Russia, Germany, and believe it or not, the Netherlands, which was kind of a shock. Soaring losses accelerate investment in anti-tech fraud. Promises the last fraud story. Long story short, pandemic has opened a Pandora's box of global fraud. Faced with seemingly endless onslaught of schemes and scams, anti-fraud pros have doubled down on analytics, and they find the latest anti-fraud technology study by the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners and SAS-based and SAS. Based on survey responses from nearly 900 of the board members, the report illuminates how organization access sectors are using technology to fight fraud. More than 40% of respondents reported accelerating their use of data analytics significantly. 60% expect their anti-fraud tech budgets to grow over the next 2 years. Hello, venture capital. Advanced analytics top the investment list, particularly AI and machine learning. Critical Magneto zero-day vulnerability under active exploitation. There was a patch release. This is for Adobe. CVE 2022-24086. This can be weaponized to achieve arbitrary code execution. Google has doubled their Linux kernel and Kubernetes zero-day rewards. So you threat hunters out there, bug hunters, go get paid. There's a bunch of other headlines. A lot of them have to deal with hybrid warfare and the whole thing with Ukraine and Russia. Check it out. CISA's talking about it. There's new Emotech going through Excel files, and CISA's adding new exploited vulnerabilities catalogs. So check out all the headlines that we've got posted with the podcast. That, Laura?
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Good stuff. Yeah, to dovetail, I got a couple exploits today to talk about. First and foremost, this Magneto. There's quite a few payloads in Python that are available out there in the community. So there's also some debugs available. So if you're out there and you're trying to defend against an active attack, check out the GitHub community. I think you might find that other authors out there put some items up that may help you. For exploits this week, also to dovetail on what you said, Mike, about the gaming industry being hit. Here's one, an insecure file permission for Teamspeak. Lots and lots of gamers, including myself, have got Teamspeak accounts where we can get in a chat group with our friends and basically have a voice over IP chat capability that's outside of the game we're playing, right? So we can be locked in our own room, and it kind of limits your ability to have a bunch of randoms come in and say various graphic material that happens in games. Anyway, so if you're using Teamspeak 3.5.6, which is the current version, take a look. I'm hoping that Teamspeak's going to drop a patch for this here pretty soon. But they were essentially in the POC were able to get a hold of create file associate execution files, and then also the uninstall exe and update exe was accessible on the Windows builds in the POC. So pretty serious stuff. Might lead to some more of the gaming hacks that we've seen so far in the last 6 to 12 months. The next one here, if you're using Fortinet, Fortimail has a reflected cross-site scripting that is achievable with a payload post. So if you're using Fortinet Fortimail, make sure you're getting off of 7.0.1. And then last but not least, if you're a Wondershare user, like I know myself and Zach are, there's 5 Wondershare their packages, right? They're different products from Wondershare, but there are a few of them. I mean, if you're using UBackit, FamiSafe, which is the nannyware, I guess, that you can put on your child's phone so that you can kind of protect them from going to certain sites. Let's see, Mobile Trans, Dr. Phone, and I guess there was only 4, so excuse me for that. But yeah, if you're using Wondershare, make sure that if you're using any of these products from Wondershare, make sure you're going out there and getting the updates as they're patching these. So with that said, that's the exploits for this week. Zach, I hear we're talking about some rainbows.
We are, all kinds of different colors and stuff and we'll break down the meaning and what that's all about. But before we do, let's take a quick break.
Want even more Cyber Rants? Be sure to subscribe to the Cyber Rants podcast. Get your copy of our best-selling book, Cyber Rants, on Amazon today. This podcast is brought to you by Silent Sector, the firm dedicated to building world-class cybersecurity programs for mid-market and emerging companies across the U.S. Silent Sector also provides industry-leading penetration tests and cyber risk assessments. Visit silentsector.com and contact us today.
And we're back. By the way, all the news articles, everything's on cyberrantspodcast.com. Go there, check out the show notes, and you can get links to all the wonderful stories that are happening out there. We only share the best of the best. So it is really the only resource you need. But that being said, let's talk about red team exercises. Let's talk about red teaming, what that is, red team versus blue team, purple team, and maybe we can do some other kind of blended approaches and see where the conversation goes. But we talk about red teaming, red team exercises. We are talking about it from the perspective of a penetration test, right? So that term, red team, has been used all over the world by many, many different organizations. You guys have any ideas where it might have originated from? The very first use of the word red team?
My response is Halo, red versus blue.
I think it's Stratego, an old board game.
Zach, what do you think?
Well, it doesn't really matter what I think. It matters what Google thinks. I used the Google and I got on the Google and I typed origin of red team term. And one of the things that pops up, and it's on Google, so it's gotta be correct.
Well, it's that or Wikipedia. So
yeah, exactly. The sole sources of truth in this world, right? But it pops up, who invented red teaming? It says the German military. Red teaming is a method developed by the German military in the 19th century, originally for training Prussian officers. But I know, red teaming from the military perspective, right? You do exercises, and the red team refers to the OP4 or opposition force, which are the bad guys, right? Are they really the bad guys, or are they just fighting for what they believe in? Like we are, I don't know. That's a whole nother topic and episode, right? We don't want to go down that road.
They're good guys pretending to be bad guys for the sake of OP4, right?
Yeah, exactly. But your red team, think of it like this: your red team is your bad guys; those are the attackers, right? And the blue team, blue is good, right? I don't know why we stereotype these colors and put them in these buckets, but blue is good, red is bad. And so from a penetration testing perspective, of course, the red team are the attackers, the blue team are the defenders, the people that have really something to lose. So that's the context, but it's used in so many places. I mean, you could, from video games to capture the flag to military engagements, all that stuff. Let's talk about kind of start off with the standard red team approach, which is in penetration testing. Essentially, you hire an organization to do a red team exercise and they say, okay, good, we're going to do that, right? And then at some point in time, the games begin, but the blue team might not necessarily know the games are beginning until they start to get all kinds of alerts and different things going on in their environment, because this potential malicious activity is happening. So that's the way a lot of penetration testing is conducted. Somebody is basically attacking, and the other organization has a very low level of visibility on that. Do you guys have any more light to shed, or anything you'd like to share? Pros and cons, anything like that, of the kind of standard approach, the red team approach?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. I mean, to go a little more in depth, what we're trying to do is the blue team is trying to understand indicators of attack, right? Your IOCs and indicators of compromise, right? And so these two things can be tested with the red team, right? And essentially, what you're trying to get at is your telemetry good enough, and are your people good enough to identify attacks, right? Indicators of attack, right? IOAs, and indicators of compromise. And so the way that is, kind of played that game out is to use a tool, or, like Netcat, I think is probably one of the most common. And so with Netcat, you can set up a file export as an example, and let the teams try to use the telemetry that they have in the firewall or load balancers, or if they've got SIM or anything like that that's running, they can try to use the telemetry to identify that file movement outside of the organization, right, into a origin that's not typical. And so I think for indicators of compromise, that's a good tool to use. For indicators of attack, like a denial of service, we like to use slow post where we find that a lot. And so if you have a page that's vulnerable to slow post, before you fix it, it's a good idea to conduct a red team with that indicator of attack. And so, if you don't have, because slow post is sneaky, right? It's a memory exhaustion denial of service. And if you don't have a job that's going out and validating that the web page is active, right? That's, looking for a keyword on the web page, just be like, yep, page is up. Yep, page is up. Or something like logarithm going where, you're validating that the page is active, then it could go down and you not know it until a customer, contacts you and says, hey, I can't get to your website. So running that indicator of attack scenario with a memory exhaustion denial of service like slow post is probably going to be a real helpful red team exercise. But yeah, Zach, I think you nailed it. That's, it's simply aggressors, and then of course your defenders, right, or your blue team trying to understand what that attack looks like and how to stop it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to put it into purposes for those organizations looking into getting a red team exercise or red team test done, there are certainly pros and cons. Now, we get requests. I think the most common request we get for somebody that wants a true red team exercise, and we'll get into the other variations shortly here, but people that want a true red team exercise, it is typically to do what you just described, Lauro, and often to test the response time and capabilities of the blue team, of the generally the in-house network team, right? The in-house IT team. They want to see, is our team equipped and ready to handle a real life attack? And so to figure that out at a random unknown time, we're going to perform our true red team exercise, and it's going to interrupt their day. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast, but it's meant to mirror a cyber attack. It could come at any given time, and usually they happen. They like to do them around major holidays, when everybody's trying to take time off with their families, right? Like Christmas, So that's it can be beneficial for that. It can be beneficial for that. Now, what I would argue and what we tell a lot of clients is that, that you can get that aspect out of it, but what we find is that is more effective in most cases is a blend of the two. So a purple team exercise, right? That's where the blue team and the red team come together. They're working together. They're aware of each other's activities. And in my opinion, I'm curious to hear what you guys think, but in my opinion, that's a better approach to really perform more of a train the trainer model, better equip the internal teams for defending in real life scenarios, right? They start to learn how these attacks occur, and then they can be aware and just spend more time eyes on their side, because they know, they're blocking out that time, they're dedicating it to really a learning experience. So would you guys say that's correct?
Yeah, I see a lot of value to red team of, we've had clients that have gone and spent a lot of money on brand new security systems, and they want to validate they actually work. And I see that as a very valuable red team. I also want to see it as a way of validating the staff is paying attention. So that's where I would see pure red team as being valuable. But I think from a enterprise strengthening standpoint, I think blue team or purple team is far more valuable because you are teaching people how to see what you're doing and identify what is really a risk and what isn't. So
yeah, red team's going to give you a good baseline, right? It's like doing that initial phishing test with the organization, right? That you don't tell everybody that the phishing mail's coming, you just see how everybody reacts,
right?
So it's certainly a good baseline, but it also, it kick you in the gut, right? Because I think a lot of the organizations that we've done that with, they're just not prepared for that level of activity. And, doing it around Christmas time, Zach, to your comment, I don't think that we had time, because last Christmas was the SolarWinds Orion, and this Christmas was Log4. So I think we had enough red teaming for the holidays to serve everybody for the next year. So we should pick like a better date, like Cinco de Mayo, or what I mean? Something get everybody when they're drunk instead of trying to go on vacation. Anyways, but yeah, no, Mike, to your point, I think purple team, that by far is going to give the best value to the organization, because you're working together with the native cybersecurity professionals that are at the organization, and you've got a time. It's a gamified still, right? But you have a time window where everybody knows what's happening. And we can test not only reaction times, but then coach through how to detect, or even advanced tools to detect capabilities that they might not have had, initially before we started the testing. But yeah, you're going to get the absolute best benefit from the teams working together.
I think also, especially for organizations that aren't on a regular pen testing tempo, that are doing their first penetration test, I don't never really recommend a red team approach right off the bat. I think purple team is much better, and it can be I don't want to say threatening, but it can be a little bit demoralizing for IT teams when all of a sudden their leadership is throwing red team exercise on them. It can almost feel like maybe there's less trust unless it's understood ahead of time that hey, we do a red team exercise every year, usually in the second or third quarter, right? And so they know that that's just part of your operations. But again, for the first time, I think the purple team approach is more effective, and just like everything we do, it's as much of a consultation as it is a testing exercise and a technical analysis.
Yeah, and it's still you've got red team, activities occurring. The difference is that the local security or technical team knows what's happening. So they can they have log times they can go and look through, right? Where you're not trying to fish through for an event in a 24-hour time span, right? We know within a couple of minutes when these activities are starting. So it makes it a lot more rewarding, I think, to the internal teams to be able to quickly identify, in a log file that something's occurring. And it gives them that kind of, that kind of backing that, hey, okay, now if this happens again, I know where to go to look now, as opposed to that. Because that first time you try to hunt an active attack that's happening down, it can be difficult, especially for teams that don't have a lot of high tech telemetry in place and sim logging and $1 million tools. If you're just a smaller shop and you're still doing this the old fashioned way, that might cause you some problems, right? It's going to cause grief in the employees. Like you said, it's kind of demoralizing that first time when you have to go back and manually look through those logs for suspicious events and you're not even quite sure what to look for. And so the purple team is going to be that consultative, hey, okay, we're going to start the attack. Okay, the attack's going on because we're all on a call. Okay, who can find it? Does anybody know? Can anybody see it going on, right? And so now at least you're in a more current log event frame, and it's a little easier to start to identify these things. So it gives you that confidence that you need to get this process rolling, because when it really does happen, it's difficult. It doesn't matter if you've practiced this or not.
From a managerial perspective, there's also risk attached to a red team. For example, if you have gone and vouched for an huge expenditure of technical services to prove your security, and it's an epic fail, that doesn't look good for you. Conversely, if you use it to try and get budget, you can show that what you've been doing up to this point has been also a fail. So there's definitely a risk. I would recommend purple team before red team, but there's risk associated with red team as well. So it's kind of
I think,
but I was just something I was thinking about is like you might blow up a career doing that too.
You sure might. No, that's a super good point. Just like with the phishing test, we do that a lot, right? That very first baseline phishing test, there's a lot of people that click.
Yeah.
And so it may sound like a good strategy for you, and it could absolutely detonate. And you realize that the tool you purchased is not doing what you thought it was going to do, and your humans aren't ready. And so, yeah, absolutely. I certainly think that the course of prescription would be to do purple team exercises, several, like 4 or 5, get the team nice and seasoned to the types of attacks, and then pull a red team exercise. Yeah. And kind of test their reaction and response.
Yeah.
Right. And just for people that are learning about this for the first time, you have other colors that are referred to in cybersecurity, right? Like your white box, gray box, black box penetration tests. And so if you're wondering, combining a red team exercise with a white box approach is not a pink team approach. It doesn't quite work that way. But we were talking earlier, and if you mix everything together, does it become a brown team exercise? And I think that's actually kind of an interesting thought. We could lump it all in, do all kinds of different hits and attacks and different methodologies, and see what comes out of it. But I think there's a lot of great ways to go about this. But again, I think the moral of the story here is start out with purple team approach. If you're not used to doing this stuff, if you're going to move into a red team approach, kind of get some of your initial testing done first, that purple team way, so you're not making anybody look terrible, putting your own career at risk, that sort of thing. And then make sure that your team is aware that, hey, this is just part of our tempo. It's no hit on you. It's not like, we're checking up, making sure that you're okay to be in the position you're in, that sort of thing. And then getting a tempo, do it, at least annually, I would say. Any advice for the blue team members, for the people within organizations going through these exercises? Any thing that you would suggest to them, telltale signs or anything to keep an eye out?
No, I think it's so, I think with all the different architectures, right, it'd be hard to give something concise for any one person to take away for, indicators of attack and indicators of compromise. But, I think something to add is that, when you look into your vendors as an example, like it sounds like if you hire us to do a web application pen test, even if you've got, APIs you want us to test, all of our testing occurs in a purple team fashion. So we work with a team like the difference is that normally if you just got a pen test, your blue team wouldn't be caring, right? They're like, okay, we have a scheduled pen test. I've got other things to do. I'm not going to watch this attack go down, right? Because they're not in that business yet, right? I mean, they are and they're not, right? They may be in the middle of deploying a project when compliance decides that they need to have a pen test done, right? So you might miss out on the opportunities. When we conduct our testing, we try to include that as a purple team every time, so that you have times when we start, you have times when we stop, you have the kind of early warning information system that we'll give you and say, hey, look, we found an exploitable attack surface. We don't ever break the glass, right? So we're going to work with the organization and say, hey, do you want to test this? We'll get you all on Zoom. We'll share the screen. We'll watch how that attack goes down. And in that middle of that, just basic pen test exercises, your teams and your technical individuals may find a way to see an attack happen, and then also to understand how to prevent it in the future, right? Because we're going to work through resolve, and then also how to detect it. So they may say, cool, well, now I just need this little script to go out and do this one little thing here. And if I see that the script comes back giving me this weird arbitrary answer, we've got an attack going on. So, look for your vendors that are going to offer that as part of their pen test, because, I think we've talked about this in other episodes. A lot of these are just canned, right? You're going to have a bot run out and do some, various activities on your target, and it's going to generate a report, and that's pretty much, there you go, you're done, right? If you just need to check a block, then that may work for you. But if you're working, if you're looking for a more, authentic penetration test, right, technical assessment that includes these types of activities for purple team, then I'd say to look for a better vendor. You could just come to us, right? I mean, that would be the place I would go.
That's pretty much the answer to all things in life, but
you really need that human interaction. You can't just do the bot tests unless you are just checking a box. And if you're just checking a box, maybe you need to find a different career.
Yeah, if you're checking a box, you're wrong.
Yeah.
One other thing I want to add about the red team approach. So, of course, pros and cons. But when it's kind of buyer beware, right? When you're shopping for red team testing, just make sure that you understand and the scope is documented very, very clearly, because for some organizations, a red team is basically, just about anything goes, right? As long as it's not, putting life and limb at risk. But red team could be social engineering, people walking into your building. It could be people going, reaching out to your staff through social media, via phone, all these different attack methodologies on the front end, that social engineering side, and then all kinds of different attack vectors, technologically speaking. So a red team exercise could be a massive, massive exercise where basically any type of attack surface is they're working on manipulating basically every avenue they can, right? But for most organizations, that's not going to be appropriate, right? Make sure that you define, hey, this is the red team approach, but we're just focused on these attack vectors, right? So that you're not putting your staff at risk. You're not putting you're not disrupting business operations other than the specific areas that you're focused on testing. So just wanted to throw that in there for those people that are shopping around for this stuff for the first time.
You can limit it to IP range, you can limit it to application, you can limit it to, all sorts of things, right? I mean,
Physical location.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, any final words of wisdom before we jump off here?
Yeah, the only thing for me to digress back to the news, right, that multi-factor is getting weak. Everybody needs to stop using the SMS feature for the multi-factor. You need to get a one-time PIN that's attached to the device. So that way, in order for them to break into your account, they have to physically come take that phone from you. Okay. Or use quantum computing to break the PIN code, right? I'm not saying that's not possible.
One of the things that, one of the stories that I should have put as a companion to that was about the SMS phishing thing. That there was a big ring, and it was somewhere in Eastern Europe. I want to say Hungary or something like that just got busted for just being massively involved in that, the SIM swapping and that sort of thing. And it's dangerous. It really is, and you need to be very cognizant of the fact that SMS is not a secure technology.
No, it's not. If you're hodling crypto, you need to be real quiet about it, and you need to make sure you're not using SMS features for your phone that is attached to the account that's got your. If you're crazy enough to use an online wallet, as an example, right? Like, don't, in any case, SMS codes for multi-factor are bad. Yeah, with SIM swapping and things like Evilgenics that you can do man in the middle with and take that authentication token and replay it. So make sure that you're not keeping your remember my computer for 30 days. Make sure you're manually putting that one-time PIN every time you log in.
Yeah. Select that it's a public computer, not it's shared, so don't remember me. But that being said,
but guys, that's an extra 20 seconds out of my day.
You shut up and you do it. You'll be more secure, trust me.
Sorry,
security is not a democracy. But that being said, SMS MFA is better than not having MFA, right? But it's a risk. I mean, there's those companies that are out there that are like, well, then why should I do it at all? But in reality, I mean, the authenticators from Norton or Google or whoever, they're free. So just put them on the phone.
Just use it.
Just use it. Just put it on.
Well, I mean, and we've seen breaches of Google accounts, Office 365 accounts, crypto
SIM
accounts,
swapping,
all of that.
People, crypto.
Yep, when they reach out and it's too late. It's too late for them at that point, in most cases. So, yeah, excellent point. And or for your critical accounts, have an actual physical key fob. USB or Bluetooth fob and you can get those for your, Google accounts and things like that. So a lot of different ways to have a second form of authentication. But
another way to put it, if you have all of your authentication and main sites tied to one physical device that has a phone number, it's a single point of failure, and you need to rethink your security strategy.
Right.
Most definitely. Well, thank you everybody for joining us on the Cyber Rants podcast, talking about red team and purple team exercises and penetration testing. Please check us out online and submit your comments, topics you want us to talk about, all of that good stuff. Again, cyberrantspodcast.com. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast and rate it as well. That helps us get this information out to more people who need to hear it, because we need to make our nation much more secure and harden the environment for so it's a hard target for cyber criminals, because we are in a major battle here against the evil. So that being said, go out there, get your penetration testing done, and have fun.
Pick up your copy of the Cyber Rants book on Amazon today. And if you're looking to take your cybersecurity program to the next level, visit us online at www.silentsector.com. Join us next time for another edition of the Cyber Rants podcast.